Prince Thane crashed hard into the dirt streets of Haven Colony. His silver body armor was cracked in 3 places, and purple blood oozed from cuts on his 4 arms. The diplomatic ship that brought him here was now nothing but smoking metal scattered across the wasteland. His royal guards were dead. His communication device was broken. And worst of all, nobody on this human planet knew who he was. He tried to stand, but his legs shook like a newborn calf. Pain shot through his chest with every breath. His people, the Corvani, were known across 12 star systems as the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had conquered worlds, built cities that floated in space, and created technology that could bend time itself. But right now, Prince Thane felt as helpless as a lost child. The settlement around him was a mess of broken buildings and dirty streets. Humans lived here like animals, he thought with disgust. Their shelters were made from scrap metal and old plastic sheets. Children ran around with bare feet and torn clothes. The smell of unwashed bodies and cooking food mixed together in the air. This was exactly what he expected from the most backward species in the known universe. A small figure appeared in front of him. It was a human girl, maybe 12 years old, with dark skin and curious eyes. Her clothes were patched and faded, but she moved with quiet confidence. She stopped just out of reach and tilted her head, studying his alien features. "You okay, mister?" she asked in the simple human language his translator could understand. Thane wanted to laugh. This tiny primitive was asking if he was okay? He was Prince Thane, heir to an empire that controlled 47 worlds. His breakfast cost more than this entire refugee camp. His smallest finger ring contained enough rare crystals to buy a human city. "Stay away from me, inferior creature," he said, his voice coming out harsh and metallic through the translator. "I am royalty. Your entire species exists only because mine allows it." The girl didn't run away or bow down like she should have. Instead, she looked even more worried. She reached into a small bag hanging from her shoulder and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When she opened it, Thane saw it was bread, dark, rough bread that looked like it had been baked over an open fire. Without saying anything, the girl broke the bread in half. The larger piece she held out to him. Her small hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of being generous when she clearly had so little. "You look hungry," she said simply. Thane stared at the offering in complete shock. Then his shock turned to rage. How dare this primitive insult him? How dare she think her garbage food was fit for Corvani royalty? His pride burned hotter than his physical pain. He knocked the bread from her hands with one swift motion of his arm. The pieces scattered in the dirt, mixing with dust and debris. "You dare offer me scraps?" His laughter was cold and cruel. "I feast on delicacies harvested from crystal gardens on 7 different worlds. I drink nectar that takes 50 years to mature. And you think I would eat the same slop you feed to your livestock?" The girl watched her bread hit the ground. For just a moment her face showed hurt. But then she bent down and carefully picked up both pieces. She brushed off the dirt as best she could and gently placed the bread on a clean stone near his feet. "Maybe you'll want it later," she said quietly, then turned to walk away. "Wait," Thane called out, though he wasn't sure why. "What is your designation, human?" "My name's Zoe," she replied, looking back over her shoulder. "Zoe," he repeated, the name feeling strange in his mouth. "You should know that helping me will bring you no reward. I have nothing to give creatures like you." Zoe smiled then, an expression so genuine and warm that it caught Thane off guard. "I wasn't looking for nothing back," she said. "Just wanted to help." And with that, she disappeared into the maze of shelters and lean-tos, leaving Prince Thane alone with his pride, his pain, and 2 pieces of bread that somehow looked more valuable than all the treasures of his empire. As darkness began to fall over Haven Colony, Thane found himself staring at that bread, wondering if maybe he didn't understand humans quite as well as he thought he did. 3 hours had passed since Zoe left the bread beside Prince Thane, and his body was shutting down fast. The Corvani biology was complex and demanding. Without the special nutrition pods from his homeworld, his system couldn't process regular food properly. His vision kept going blurry, and his 4 arms felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. The bread sat there on the stone mocking him. It looked even more pathetic now, covered with a thin layer of dust from the evening wind. But his stomach was twisting with hunger pains he'd never experienced before. In his palace on Corvin Prime, meals were delivered every few hours, perfectly balanced nutrients in crystal containers, each one worth more than most beings made in a lifetime. Now he was starving on a garbage planet, surrounded by the most primitive species in the galaxy. A small cough made him look up. Zoe had returned, and this time she wasn't alone. A younger boy walked beside her, maybe 8 years old, carrying a dented metal cup that steamed in the cool evening air. The boy had the same dark eyes as Zoe, and the same careful way of moving, like someone who'd learned early that the world could be dangerous. "This is my little brother Kai," Zoe said, settling down cross-legged in the dirt beside Thane. "He helped me make soup." "Soup?" Thane almost laughed again, but he was too weak. These humans were offering him soup like it was some great gift. He'd eaten meals prepared by the finest chefs in 12-star systems. He'd tasted foods so rare that wars had been fought over single harvests. But when Zoe held the cup close to his face, the smell hit him. It was simple, vegetables and something that might have been meat, all boiled together with water. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. Just warm and real and right there when he needed it most. "I can't," he whispered, though his translator made it sound harsh. "Corvani physiology cannot process primitive food preparations." Kai spoke up for the first time, his young voice serious. "Mama used to say hungry don't care about fancy. Hungry just want food." "Your mother sounds like a fool," Thane replied automatically, then immediately regretted it when he saw the flash of pain in both children's eyes. "Our mama died 2 years ago," Zoe said quietly, still holding the soup. "She was a soldier. Died protecting civilian ships from raiders. Said it was her duty to keep families safe, even ones she'd never met." The silence stretched between them. Thane had insulted their dead mother without even thinking. In Corvani culture, such an insult would mean immediate death or exile. These children should have thrown the soup in his face and walked away. Instead, Zoe just waited patiently, the cup still extended toward him. "Why do you persist?" Thane asked, genuinely confused now. "I have shown you nothing but contempt. I mocked your offering. I insulted your family. By all logic, you should leave me to die." Zoe exchanged a look with her brother. "You ever been really hungry before?" she asked. Thane shook his head. "It hurts," Kai said simply. "Hurts real bad. We don't want nobody to hurt like that if we can help it." The cup was still there, still warm, still waiting. Thane's pride battled with his desperation. He was Prince Thane, heir to the Corvani throne. He didn't accept charity from primitives. He didn't need help from beings so far beneath him. But he was also dying. With shaking hands he reached for the cup. His fingers brushed against Zoe's as she helped guide it to his mouth. The soup was thin and simple, probably made from scraps and leftovers. It tasted like nothing he'd ever eaten in his royal dining halls. It was also the most wonderful thing he'd ever tasted in his life. As the warm liquid hit his stomach, he felt strength flowing back into his body. Not much, but enough to think clearly again. Enough to notice things he'd missed before. Like how carefully Zoe had cleaned the cup before bringing it to him. How Kai had given up his own evening meal to make sure there was enough soup. How both children were thinner than they should be, but still found something to share with a stranger who'd been cruel to them. "This settlement," Thane said slowly, "how many people live here?" "Maybe 3,000, Zoe replied. "Humans, Trilaxians, some vegan refugees. All kinds of folks who got nowhere else to go." "And you feed them all?" "Like this." Kai nodded proudly. "We all help each other. Mrs. Chen grows vegetables in her little garden. Mr. Washington fixes broken stuff for free. Big Jake protects the little kids from bullies. Everybody does what they can." Thane stared into the empty cup, his mind reeling. These humans lived in poverty that would shame the lowest servants in his palace. Yet they built something he'd never seen in all his travels across the galaxy. A community based on giving instead of taking. Maybe these primitives weren't quite as simple as he'd thought. Over the next few days, Prince Thane's body slowly healed, but his mind was going through something much more dramatic. Every morning, Zoe would appear with food, sometimes soup, sometimes bread, once even a piece of fruit she traded her own blanket to get. She never asked for anything in return. She never mentioned how he'd treated her that first day. She just showed up, made sure he ate, and went about her daily routine. And what a routine it was. Thane had expected to see chaos in this refugee camp. In Corvani society, when resources were scarce, the strong took from the weak. It was natural law. The superior species survived while the inferior ones served or died. That's how civilization worked throughout the galaxy. But Haven Colony operated on completely different rules. He watched Zoe spend her mornings teaching a group of mixed children, human kids sitting next to young Trilaxians with their blue skin and tentacle hair, while a couple of vegan refugee youngsters with their cat-like features listened from the back. She used old books held together with tape and string, drawing letters in the dirt when paper ran out. "Why do you teach the alien children?" Thane asked her one day. "They're not your species. They can offer you nothing." Zoe looked at him like he'd asked why the sky was blue. They're just kids, she said. Kids need to learn how to read, don't matter what planet they come from. That afternoon, he watched an elderly human man named Floyd teach a group of teenagers how to repair electronic equipment. Floyd had lost his right arm in some long-ago war, but his left hand moved with expert precision as he showed them how to fix broken communicators and power cells. The hegemony raids destroyed most of our good tech, Floyd explained to his students. But if we can't buy new, we learn to fix old. Everybody benefits when everybody can contribute. One of Floyd's students was a teenage Trilaxian girl whose family had nothing to pay for lessons. Another was a human boy whose parents had died in a transport crash. They worked side by side, sharing tools, helping each other figure out complicated circuits. In the evenings, Thane observed something even stranger. The humans organized what they called community dinners, where everyone brought whatever food they could find. Sometimes it was just boiled vegetables. Sometimes someone had managed to catch fish from the polluted river that ran through their settlement. The portions were always small, but they were always shared. He watched Zoe's neighbor, an older woman named Grace, divide her single can of protein paste among 5 families, keeping the smallest portion for herself. When Thane asked why she gave away most of her food, Grace laughed. "Honey, I've been hungry before, but I never been so hungry I forgot how to share," she said. "Besides, little Kai's still growing. He needs it more than I do." The most shocking thing happened on his 4th day in the settlement. A new group of refugees arrived, Corvani refugees. Thane's own people, survivors from a transport that had been attacked by raiders. They were injured, scared, and completely broke. Thane expected the humans to turn them away. After all, the Corvani Empire had conquered several human colonies. These people had every reason to hate his species. Instead, Zoe was among the first to help. She gave up her own sleeping area so a wounded Corvani mother could rest somewhere clean. She helped carry medical supplies that Grace had organized from their tiny emergency stash. She even tried to learn a few words in the Corvani language so she could comfort the scared Corvani children. "You help my people?" Thane asked her, genuinely bewildered. "But we are enemies. We have taken human worlds. We consider your species inferior." Zoe was holding a small Corvani child who was crying for his missing parents. She rocked him gently, humming a human lullaby that seemed to calm his alien sobs. "Don't matter what happened before," she said simply. "Right now they're hurt and scared and far from home. Just like you were when you got here." That night, Thane lay awake thinking about everything he'd witnessed. In his empire, power meant the ability to take what you wanted from those weaker than you. Status came from having others serve your needs. Success was measured by how much you could accumulate and keep for yourself. But these humans had built something completely different. They'd created strength through connection instead of domination. They'd found wealth in generosity rather than hoarding. They'd achieved something his advanced civilization had never managed, a society where everyone mattered, regardless of species, background, or what they could offer in return. For the first time in his privileged life, Prince Thane began to wonder if maybe the primitive humans understood something about civilization that his advanced empire had missed entirely. Maybe being superior wasn't about who served you. Maybe it was about who you chose to serve. The warning sirens started screaming at dawn. Thane jerked awake from his makeshift bed in Grace's spare room, his 4 arms instinctively reaching for weapons that weren't there. Through the thin walls, he could hear the distinct whine of hegemony fighter ships cutting through the morning air. "Raiders!" someone shouted outside. "Hegemony raiders incoming." Thane's blood went cold. The hegemony were brutal pirates who attacked defenseless settlements for sport and profit. They especially loved hitting refugee camps because the people couldn't fight back and had nowhere to run. In civilized space, military forces would evacuate immediately, saving who they could and abandoning the rest. It was standard procedure. Zoe burst through the door, her eyes wide but determined. "Can you move?" she asked, tossing him a power pack she'd somehow acquired. "We're gonna need everybody who can fight." Before Thane could answer, the first explosions rocked the settlement. The raiders were targeting the outer shelters first, trying to drive everyone toward the center where they'd be easier to capture. Standard hegemony tactics. "You need to run," Thane told her, struggling to his feet. "Get your brother and flee to the hills. This is not your fight." Zoe stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "These are our homes. These are our people. Where exactly you think we gonna run to?" More explosions. Closer now. Through the window, Thane could see the sleek black shapes of hegemony fighters swooping low, their energy weapons cutting through shelters like paper. People were screaming, some running in panic, others weren't running at all. Thane watched in amazement as Floyd, the one-armed veteran, appeared in the street carrying an old military communicator. His voice boomed over the settlement's emergency system. All children and elderly to the underground tunnels. Medical team to Shelter 7. Defense positions Alpha through Delta, move now. Defense positions? These people had defense positions? Come on. Zoe grabbed Thane's arm, pulling him toward the door. You said you were trained for combat, right? We could use the help. Outside was controlled chaos, but it wasn't the panic Thane expected. Instead, he saw something that defied everything he knew about how civilians should behave under attack. Grace was leading a group of children toward hidden tunnel entrances, her movements calm and efficient. The teenagers he'd seen learning electronics were now manning communication posts, coordinating evacuation routes. And Zoe was running straight toward the heaviest fighting. Where are you going? Thane shouted, his longer legs letting him catch up. Shelter 19, she called back. There's families trapped in there. A hegemony fighter screamed overhead, its weapons tearing through the settlement's main meeting hall. The building collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris, and Thane was sure they were all going to die. Instead, what happened next would stay with him for the rest of his life. Kai appeared from behind an overturned transport, carrying a salvaged energy rifle that was almost as big as he was. The 8-year-old took careful aim at the fighter's engine intake and fired. His shot was perfect, sending the raider ship spinning into the ground in a ball of flame. Nice shot, little brother. Zoe yelled, then disappeared into the smoke around Shelter 19. Thane followed her, his combat training finally kicking in. Inside the damaged building, he found families huddled together, humans, Trilaxians, even some of the Corvani refugees who'd arrived just days before. A support beam had fallen across the main exit, trapping them inside while fire spread through the structure. Help me with this. Zoe was already trying to lift the beam, her small hands bleeding from the rough metal. Together they managed to shift the debris enough for people to crawl through. Thane found himself carrying a wounded Trilaxian elder while Zoe guided a group of terrified Corvani younglings toward safety. The same children she'd been teaching to read were now fighting to save lives alongside adults who should have been protecting them. The south tunnel entrance is blocked. Floyd's voice crackled over the communicators. We need alternate routes for sectors 5 and 6. What about the old mining shaft? Grace's voice responded. She was supposed to be evacuating with the elderly, but instead she was coordinating rescue operations from somewhere in the underground tunnels. Too dangerous. Cave-in risk is too high. I'll take them through, Zoe announced, appearing beside them with soot covering her face. I know those tunnels better than anybody. Before anyone could protest, she was leading another group of refugees toward what Thane was sure was certain death. But somehow, impossibly, she brought them all back alive. As the battle raged around them, Thane realized he wasn't watching civilized beings flee from superior force. He was watching something he'd never seen before, an entire community choosing to fight for each other, even when retreat was the logical choice. These weren't soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, mechanics, and children. But they fought like heroes. The last hegemony fighter exploded in a brilliant fireball just as the Corvani rescue ships appeared on the horizon. Thane sat in the rubble of what used to be the settlement's main square, his royal armor scorched and dented, watching human children chase away some of the galaxy's most feared raiders with nothing but courage and improvised weapons. Around him, the survivors were already starting to rebuild. Grace was organizing medical care for the wounded, treating human and alien injuries with equal attention. Floyd was salvaging communication equipment from the wreckage, his one good hand working faster than most people could manage with two. And Zoe was helping families dig through the ruins of their homes, looking for precious belongings and lost memories. Your Highness. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Commander Rex, his personal aide, came running across the debris field with a squad of Corvani soldiers. Thank the ancestors you're alive. We've been searching for days. Thane looked at his rescue team, perfectly polished armor, advanced weapons, faces showing the expected mixture of relief and disgust at having to visit such a primitive world. Everything that had once represented his normal life now felt strange and distant. Commander, he said quietly, not bothering to stand. Good of you to finally arrive. We came as soon as we received your emergency beacon, sir. The transport is ready for immediate departure. Medical teams are standing by to treat any contamination or psychological trauma from extended contact with these creatures. Rex's voice carried the automatic disdain that all Corvani felt toward humans. It was the same tone Thane had used just a week ago. Now it made him feel sick to his stomach. Actually, Commander, I won't be leaving immediately. Rex's mandibles clicked in confusion. Sir? I'm afraid I don't understand. Before Thane could answer, Zoe appeared beside them, her clothes torn and dirty from the battle, her young face streaked with dust and exhaustion. She was carrying a small Corvani child who'd been separated from his parents during the fighting. Found little Vex hiding in the old water tank, she said, gently transferring the frightened child to one of the Corvani soldiers. He's scared but not hurt. His mama's looking for him over by the medical station. The soldier took the child awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with accepting help from a human. But little Vex immediately reached out toward Zoe, making the soft chirping sounds that young Corvani made when they felt safe. It's okay, sweetie, Zoe said, gently patting the child's silver carapace. These are your people. They're gonna take good care of you. Rex stared at the interaction with obvious bewilderment. In his experience, humans either feared Corvani or tried to exploit them. The idea of a human child risking her life to save a Corvani youngster was completely outside his understanding of how the universe worked. As I was saying, Thane continued, I'll be staying here temporarily to establish a relief station. Contact the Royal Treasury and arrange for immediate humanitarian aid. Sir, with respect, these are just refugees. Displaced beings from conquered worlds. The Empire's policy is. The Empire's policy is about to change, Commander. Thane stood up, his full royal authority finally returning to his voice. I want construction teams here within the week. Medical supplies, food processors, educational equipment. And I want it done right, not as charity, but as investment in future allies. Over the next few hours, as Corvani ships landed and began unloading supplies, Thane watched his soldiers interact with the human settlement. Most of them remained distant and suspicious, following protocol. But a few began to notice what he'd learned to see. They watched Kai teach a young Corvani refugee how to repair a broken toy. They saw Grace sharing her own medicine with a wounded Corvani soldier who'd been injured trying to help during the raid. They observed Floyd working alongside Corvani engineers to rebuild the settlement's power grid, his expertise earned through years of making do with broken equipment. Sir, Rex said quietly, appearing beside Thane as the sun began to set. I've been watching these humans today. They're not what our intelligence report suggested. Thane smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed since his ship crashed. No, Commander, they're not. That evening, the temporary command post was set up in Grace's partially rebuilt community hall. Thane found himself sitting around a small fire with Zoe, Kai, Floyd, and several other settlement leaders, sharing a simple meal of reconstituted protein and salvaged vegetables. You really gonna stay and help us rebuild? Zoe asked, passing him a cup of the thin soup he'd once found so disgusting and now considered the finest meal he'd ever tasted. For a while, yes. But more importantly, I'm going to make sure the galaxy knows what happened here today. How a group of refugees with nothing but courage and compassion drove off one of the most dangerous raider fleets in known space. We just did what anybody would do, Floyd said quietly. Looked after each other. Thane shook his head. No, Floyd. You did what humans do. And that's something the rest of us need to learn. As he began dictating his official report later that night, Thane chose his words carefully. This wasn't just a story about surviving a raider attack. It was about discovering that true strength didn't come from superior technology or military might. It came from the willingness to care for others even at cost to yourself. His final entry would become legendary throughout the Corvani Empire. Any species that can turn a prince into a better person over a bowl of soup, and then teach him to fight for strangers as if they were family, possesses a power that no army can defeat. The humans had won more than a battle that day. They'd won a war that most of the galaxy didn't even know was being fought, the war between those who take and those who give, between those who rule through fear and those who lead through love. And in a small refugee settlement on a forgotten world, a prince had learned which side he wanted to be on.